You are in Warriors Huddle with me, Bram. No Marcus, at least up front right now. But joining me per usual, my master of all things video and sound, Maxime.
How's it going?
Maxime, I am fired up to announce that rejoining us after hell of long, the former Golden State beat writer for the Bay Area Newsbreak, who covered the rise of a dynasty, a high-profile sports author who has significantly contributed to more media outlets than I can list, including Fox Sports Radio, Spectrum Sportsnet Television, and Sportskeeda, a current LA sports scene expert and a fellow member of Table 9 at a wedding we attended just last week, Mr. Mark Medina. What's going on, Mark?
I'm just riding the wave of the high of being having the honor of joining a wedding party with you. Table 9 is the most important part of the resume.
Quick audio video question for Maxime. So it turns out, Maxime, dude, like the skill set of looking into a camera while talking to other people is not natural for me. Like I'm looking at this camera now and it looks like I'm constantly looking to the left. Any tips on how I can handle this?
You got to put your own image as close to the camera as possible, and then it'll seem like you're looking at it because we all know you're just looking at yourself the whole time.
Factually accurate. That's what I'm looking at now, but it looks like I'm looking to the left. And every time I try to look just into the camera, I kind of space out because I can't really see any of you guys. So for those watching on YouTube, if it looks like I'm looking off to the side, blame Maxime. I blame Maxime
Every time.
100%. Let's talk Warriors, boys, and let's go to a segment we haven't done forever. It's called the over-under. Here's the first, all right? Minutes per game for Jonathan Kuminga from January 1st forward, right? So they got to figure out the rotation for a few months. We'll get through the Christmas game, that kind of stuff. But you hope that by January, now we're really working on the rotations and seeing where this goes. I put the number at 25 minutes per game. For a point of reference, last year, he played 20.8. So he played almost 21 minutes a game, which is a little more than I thought it would be. And we've heard this is a big year. We're going to need him to contribute. So I'm going to go to you first, Mark. What do you think?
Yeah, that seems like a reasonable number. I would basically go even, but slightly over. And this is assuming that the Warriors don't trade him, of course, before the trade deadline if they want to further lean into the veterans and be in win now mode. Part of the reasons why they've been making some moves in the last few years that fall under salary cap cost cutting wasn't just to be able to save money, give them more tools to assemble the roster. It was to pave the pathway for their younger players to play. Now, what happens with that number as far as the quality of play, that is the ultimate question, because it's very intriguing about his potential as well as his weaknesses.
Frustratingly, if he got traded, then the over is a lock. You know what I mean? Like if he went into any other location, he'd probably get as many minutes as he could possibly eat. So for me, I'm going to take the over, but I'll be transparent. Before I did a little research, before I knew how many minutes he played last year, I was going to say the under for sure. I was even going to put the number at a lower number. And then I was surprised looking up the stats that it was already at 20.8 last year. So my over is an optimistic one. You know, it's assuming that he's actually going to embrace and be good at the increased role that the Warriors want out of him, that he becomes the rebounder, maybe that he hasn't been, and that they could take advantage of his athleticism and his youth.
Hell yeah. And I think you touched on something that's really important, which is his youth. If he's going to be playing the 4 spot, maybe he's going to be backup minutes for Draymond. And we might be wanting to preserve a little bit of Draymond's remaining youth. At the same time, we're all feeling pretty optimistic that Chris Paul will be anchoring the second unit. And if that's the case, he might actually make Jonathan Kuminga look a lot better. So I think those two things, right? The like youth in contradistinction to the starter's age. And then also Chris Paul just making him look better. I'm going to take the over as well.
I like the word contradistinction. That's nicely played by you. I also agree with most of the analysis. I only say most because I got distracted by the trying to look into the camera and it didn't really work out for me again. But the things I heard, I thought were on the money. To our next, all right, over under. The number is 30. Here's the idea. Steph Curry points per game. All right. So last year, Steph averaged 29.4. So we're not talking a huge jump, but also worth saying that 29.4 is one of the highest in his career. He's always had incredible numbers, but not necessarily 30 points per game. To give you some time to think here, Mark, I'll go first. I say over. All right. But there's some more rationale than just optimism. I think Steph is primed for just an enormous year. He's coming off a huge playoffs. There's no question about that. Secondly, this year, both from the team standpoint and from everyone's standpoint, is about maximizing Steph. That CP3 trade, all of these things is recognizing that his title window might be closing and they need to go all the way in. So I think that he recognizes that. And then in related, this offseason has been Steph's like coming out party as a superstar. I know that he has 4 titles. I know he's already won MVPs. I know he's already been labeled a superstar. But if you look around, his presence is way more during this offseason than it has been any other time. I don't know if it's because of the documentary. I don't know if it's because he wants to strike while the iron is hot right now, but we've seen him at a Drake show. We've seen him giving multiple interviews. We've seen him being a part of all of these podcasts. I think he is embracing his presence as a top 5 player, and I think we're going to see that next year. So I take the over. Mark?
Well, Bram, I liked all the points that he made, but I'm going to take the under on a technicality because sometimes the Warriors version of going all in on Steph is making sure that they don't make Steph have to go all in. But look, we're talking tomato here. Steph getting 27, 28, 29 points as opposed to 30.
I watched a movie recently where one of the characters dropped the line, just because that sentence is symmetrical doesn't mean it makes sense. And I tried to keep it in the pocket, like I've wanted to use it. And unfortunately, your symmetrical sentence there did make sense. So I can't use it, but it was close. I got excited, like, here's my chance. And then it didn't actually land for me. Welcome, MT. Great to see you, man. Let's go to another over under. The number is 0.5, less than 1.5. The topic is, how many times will Draymond Green be the subject of a national media story that did not originate on a basketball floor?
I mean, I get if he talks about basketball on his podcast, does that count?
Yeah, for sure. Yeah, I just mean anything that didn't happen between the lines. So if he records a podcast, unless he records that shit during the 48-minute game, it definitely counts as off the floor.
Yeah, I'm still going to go under. I mean, I know he had the funny take about Mbappe's pay and whether or not Al Hilal had a basketball league, but I still think he keeps it in check for the season, especially knowing that these are the twilight years of him, Steph, and Clay's run.
A fool jumped at a fake KG quote. It wasn't even actually KG, and he made it a big fucking deal. Of course it'll be over. Of course. I think that Draymond is unapologetic about who he is and the conflict that causes. I also think that that personality trait is what's allowed him to be a Hall of Famer. But I think it is going to result in more than 0.5. Mark, why don't you be our tiebreaker here? What do you think, dude? Over or under?
Oh, it's way over. I mean, you already pencil in before the first game against the Washington Wizards, there's going to be podcasts and interviews in which he revisits the Jordan Poole situation once again. And I'm sure after the game, he'll revisit it.
All right. Equally as exciting topic. And Maxime, I'm going to give you this one first. All right. The number is 28 million. 28 million is our over under. Here's the question. How much money per year will Clay get in his next contract? So the point of reference, Draymond got 25, 4 years, 25 million each, $100 million contract. Clay is under contract for just one more year this next year. All right. What do you think? Over, under 28?
I have to believe it's going to be under. There's more dimensions to how he ages. I think he can still be a floor general. I think he can still be a defensive presence. Even if he's not going to be an on-ball defender, he sees the floor in a really important way. Clay is a catch-and-shoot player at the end of the day, one of the greatest of all time, but he's lost a step on defense.
I'd have to think under as well for the same reasons that Maxime had. I think that Clay relatively can have a better season than last season, but I don't know if that's saying much because in the playoffs, he'll be the first to admit that he did not play well whatsoever. And while I don't think that he's ever going to go to another team, I think that he will be a Warrior for life. Next summer is going to be a lot of potentially awkward discussions about how they keep that. Do they get creative and say, Clay, okay, we'll pay you maybe close to that number, but it's just fewer years? Or do we give you longevity in exchange for cost savings?
I think because of what Jaylen Brown's just got for a contract, $60 million a year, 5-year, $300 million max contract. I think Clay goes above $28 million. I think Clay is too close to the player that Jaylen Brown is in order to say that he gets a third of what Jaylen Brown would get.
Can I take my answer back? MT is right.
Okay, Steph, the number 0.5. The idea, how many championships left in his career? So if you asked Maxime, MT, or I, we're all going to say over. That's why I'm giving it just to you. What do you think, man? Over, under, titles left for Steph?
Oh, it's definitely the over. I mean, he's still playing at it. He's been, what's so funny is I feel like since 2017, Steve Kerr has been saying that he's playing at his peak. Like, how can you peak for 6+ years? But somehow Steph is doing that. He has not only been such a magnificent shooter, but just adding all those different layers with his strength, attacking the basket, not being an elite defender, but like being a pretty good defender. So, yeah, he's definitely got more titles on the shelf.
Mark, I was looking forward to today. I always do when we have you on. You were phenomenal, and I know I'm not the only one thinking that way. For those out there who need way more Medina in their life, where do they go?
Well, look, I don't mean to sound like a Wikipedia entry, but that's inevitable. I'll go on Warriors Huddle, but here are the things. Writing, we got Sportsnaut, Sporting Tribune, and the newly added Sportskeeda. TV, if you're in LA, I'm on Spectrum Sportsnet, CBS LA, National Lens, FS1. And then radio, it's all national with Fox Sports Radio.
You know where to find us. You want to get us an email to tell us we're doing a good job, bad job, any job, you can shoot that too.
Huddle@warriorshuddle.com.
We're on numerous social media spots. Just check out a social media place of your choosing and type in Warriors Huddle. We're also on Patreon. Let me just say the people who do support us on Patreon mean the world to us. There's a Slack channel that has become almost a family-like environment. So shout out to our Patreon row. In fact, we're going to be having them in for an episode very soon here. And with that in mind, go Warriors. Hopefully, we'll see you real soon.